zombies that happen to be black people. Clearly it starts to invite debate, and is that a good thing? I'm not going to read this out. This is actually a quote from someone who has been right at the forefront of criticism about developing a game. And if anyone can pick it. I do answer it on the next slide. I like that picture too. I just found it somewhere. I think it's very expressive, I think, of attitudes toward games and projections and, as I said, film theorists. It all comes through for me. Can I go to the next slide? Yeah, cool. How did we didn't actually get to a consensus on how to pronounce his name, did we, Helen? Ledoni? Sorry? Ledone. Danny Ledone, we'll call it. If anyone knows otherwise, please don't correct me. I feel embarrassed. This was a statement that Danny Ledone, the author of the Super Columbine Massacre, RBG, released in response to the Virginia Tech shooting. Now, as some of you may know, there was also a game released about Virginia Tech that caused a lot of indignation from pretty much all quarters of the world, and was not helped by the actual statements of the game's author, who seemed to be really just about getting up as many people as he could because he thought that was funny. But does that make his statement any less valid? I don't think so. So Danny released this wonderful statement about, yes, someone should make a game about it because, it's important. And it's also interesting to note that Danny matured over the years. He became very media savvy, and he actually became aware of what people were saying about his work and things that he wouldn't have thought about initially about what he was doing, and statements that he was making about very simple things like, I put this picture of Manson, Marilyn Manson, who was implicated. And if you've seen Bowling for Columbine, you would have known that Manson got implicated as one of the reasons the shooting happened, and the shooters actually despised him and did not own any of his music, and yet they just sort of jumped on him and said, "No, it's all your fault." The lyrics are sure to inspire impulsive aggression and rage. So some images, and there's also some from VTech, and I think looking at the two Super Columbine ones, they are disturbing because these are pictures of people that have committed real life atrocities, and the background menu for the game is actually a live shot of them during their killing spree, and you know that people really did die, and you're actually participating in an experience that's modelling and has modelled that. And the diametrically opposite ones are from VTech, and they're actually, interestingly enough, using actual quotes and scripts that, I figured his name was Chow, developed. Sorry? Chow. Okay, developed. And, you'd think that it's interesting. He's actually adapting his material in order to make a statement, or at least get inside. And what, sorry, I'm going to what interests me a great deal about this comment, and something that Danny says, is that it was really, really psychologically hard for him to create that game. And he could never create the sequel, the VTech game, because he said, I just don't ever want to go back to that place. It was terrible. In here, to create that game, it just almost destroyed me. It was cathartic for him. He had to go and do it. He felt games, for him, we think of them as edutainment. Sorry, he needed an expression, and he somehow chose games to express that anger and confusion about what had happened. And suddenly people are saying, you can't do that in a game. And he's like, well, this is our generation, or this generation of people now are actually looking to games as an artistic expression for things that they feel. And I think that is more important than a lot of the arguments that actually get placed in the content. Because you've got to remember, this kid was only 18, I think, when he produced the game. I'd hate to be judged on some of the creative work I did at 18 by an international audience, so I'd be quite scared. So here is just a quick slide about talking about the accessibility of this technology now, and it's allowing people like Danny to express themselves. He used Game Creation Studio, I think it's called, just a simple, or RPG Maker, I think that's right, to create this game, and didn't really require a lot of technical knowledge that we typically associate with the game authoring process. It was just making a game, and he let the content speak for itself. And that's now we're starting to see these art mods and serious games come out of this movement as well, which is a good thing. So serious games for me, I've often been synonymous with education. And I don't think, I spoke to Helen during the break about the game Civilization. Academics love it. Not because of the I guess, the accurateness of the historicity. There's no connection between a Babylonian king that survives until the year 2000. What's really great about that game is that it teaches you about epistemology, the theory of knowledge, and how knowledge begets knowledge, and how knowledge has actually transmutated and moved through cultures, and that's how actually you snowball up. And so it teaches you about the fundamental concepts of civilization, not that it's about, well, I guess it is, when you look back, it is about who beats who and who takes over what. But it's also much more focused around what you know as a civilization. And that, to me, is the shining light of what games can actually achieve, is that they can teach you something without you actually even knowing it. Because I know certainly for myself, I was a terrible student when I was growing up. And as soon as I was being told, I didn't listen. But when I came to it on my own, it made much more sense, and it stuck. I love this particular game. I've never played it. I don't think I ever will. I just love the idea of it. And I think that's a really strong thing to say. This was a mod made for Unreal Tournament called 9/11 Survivor. And I think the whole point of it was, you were basically a businessman in a building, the planes hit, no matter what you did, you died. That was the whole point of the game. You could not escape. So the fatalism of that experience, I mean, it didn't take the guys too long to make, but I think it was a definite emotional capsule of how they felt, and they used game technology to make you feel that as well. And that's better than, I think, some of the movies that have come out based around 9/11. I think this actually made a more poignant kind of point than to sort of have to really politically treat characters. I forget the name of the film, Flight 6 something or other, which was based upon the actual aircraft that was hijacked but ditched. There's so much more sensitivity that you need to certain, racial demographics that occupy the plane, and you don't want to get into arguments like George Lucas using Jewish archetypes in Star Wars Episode 1. This game just got straight to the point and said, you die no matter what. That's what it was like to be 9/11. And I think that's beautiful, really. And this is another dimension that I'll just quickly bring because I do want to throw to the others. I love this slide. I hope it's a real homeless man. Obviously a homeless man who still has a sense of humour, so good on him. You can get a copy of it if you like. It sounds like he likes it. I'm very interested in this. We play Counter-Strike. I know people, students that love Counter-Strike. But do they ever give a moment's thought to the fact that, this enemy that they're shooting is a terrorist? And they go, yeah, it's the bad guy, the terrorist. But the point I'd like to make is that terrorist is, in his own tongue, a liberation fighter, fighting for ideals against a political mindset, an ideology that has need for valid expression in order to maintain ideals of democracy, religious freedom, all these issues that just suddenly get glossed over because we put the label on them of terrorists. And I know that there are gamers and game developers out there that are now more interested in doing these kind of things. I know America's Army actually plays a really interesting trick. America's Army, if nobody knows, is a product that was actually commissioned by the American Army, paid for by the American tax dollars, cost them $10 million, and in terms of bang for buck, in recruiting, it is the best tool they've ever created. You've seen their recruitments flow, just like nothing else they've ever put their money into. And you were obviously set up and had to go take out terrorists. But the terrorists were actually other multiplayer gamers, but you would look like terrorists to them. So it was all a matter of perspective. So you both looked at each other and you both saw terrorists even. So the game just swapped the play models. So you saw what was consistent. You were never going to be a bad guy shooting the Americans. It was always the other end. So that was clever, but they did that on a commercial set. So there has been talk, and I think Justin's going to talk about some of the Iraqi, Baghdad kind of fun and games that are going on. And that's something that I think is lacking, and I think this is where serious games, they're not just games that are simulations, they're actually serious about getting across a point of view. And they will spend a little bit more time that would otherwise just be glossed over to sort of say, you know what, let's not trivialise the fact that you're going to be now playing a game where you kill 1,000 people and get points for it. Let's actually give it a premise, and that's why the homeless man who needs money for revenge because ninjas killed his family, at least it's a context, there's been some discussion that narrative is kind of